foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? And in Psalm 11, verse 1, in the Lord put I my trust. How say ye to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? For lo, the wicked bend their bow, ready to shoot. They make ready their arrow upon the string, that they may privily shoot at the upright in heart. And then right after saying this, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? Wow. Lord, we thank you that we can do something. God, I pray that you'd speak to every heart, my own especially as I'm giving it, entering another year of going to all kinds of different places. I pray, God, with all my heart, that you would help this church today to see what they can do about it. In Jesus' name, amen. I don't know about you, but I've been watching the TV news a lot to keep up with what's going on. And how many times that we've yelled at the TV, and how many of you agree it does no good to yell at the television? What are they going to do about this? And then it hit me, the answer is, what will the righteous do? And how many believe with God there's a lot more power than just getting the right politician in? So what can the righteous do? So in the Lord, he says, I put my trust. Now, he was probably jealous when, David's was, if you think about the scripture, the woman answered one another and they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And so all of a sudden you see the jealousy here, and we see how the foundations have been destroyed. And so what the devil tries to say to us is what this wicked counsel came to him, and it said this: if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? In other words, why don't you just flee to your mountain? Why don't you just run away? And how many are glad when we trust God we don't have to run away? Amen. And so he said, why don't you just run? No hope, so just flee. More suicides happening in 1 year than what happened in the whole war, COVID crisis of how many died in the whole world. So why don't you just quit going to schools, flee to the mountain, go to Hawaii, and rest your body? No, sir. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? When a principal took me out of the school and brought me in front of a cemetery, a mock cemetery, he said, here are 15 students that died recently in my school. And I began to cry, and I said, a cemetery ought to never be in front of a public school. So if the foundations are destroyed, what can we do about it? Children 8 to 12 years old now on the cell phone 5 hours a day. 13 to 19, 8 hours a day on an average. Well, you say, I don't want to be like a helicopter parent and kind of hover over what they're doing on the cell phone. Well, how many believe we don't need a helicopter, we need a fighting jet parent who will fight for the kids? So we need to be fighting for this. What are we going to do about it when technology is going like it is? When your young person can be babysat by sex-saturated world, babysat by perverts, transvestites, fornicators, traffickers, homosexuals, and so on. They are being babysat by them with this little device that they have. But thank God, we can do something about it. Thank God for that. When I was at the Titanic Museum, I went in there and realized that this is the most well-attended museum in the world, and the owner of it began to talk to me about how she's burdened, took me in the room where all these people died that played musical instruments during the Titanic sinking. And if you know the story of it, they all went down, and all of a sudden, they were singing Near Am I, God to Thee, as people died. And she let me give the gospel in that room. As I was thinking about that, I was amazed. And then all of a sudden it came to me. And I need your prayers about this, because what an amazing attention getter this would be, where people are hitting their icebergs right now: drugs, alcohol, suicide, and so many things that they're hitting as an iceberg, and they're ready to sink. And I thought to myself, boy, maybe we could just put a little 3-minute thing together where all of a sudden, people are beginning to sink because of what drugs and alcohol are doing to them. As they started out on the top of the iceberg, they've hit their iceberg. And then how many of you are glad his arm is not shortened that it cannot save? How many believe God's arm is long enough to save anybody? And I thought, wouldn't it be something if they could bring an arm of God catching those folks as they were falling off their iceberg, lifting them up, bringing them to the shore where an old rugged cross is there, and they're kneeling before the old rugged cross getting saved. And while this whole thing happens, while the arm of God lifts up those people, a hymn gets sung. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, but the master of the sea heard my despairing cry, and from the waters lifted me. Now safe am I. How many of you are glad the old rugged cross is still safe for people? And then all of a sudden, after they're kneeling at the cross, the song would come on about how incredible it is that on Christ, the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. And now I've got people that may end up putting that together, really pray about that. But when I heard this, I was shocked. When I heard that the enchanted chambers in Disney World where you buy princess dresses, a man in a mustache greets everybody in a dress. And when I heard that clothes are now being made for infants in our department stores, promoting the trends and so on, and a school board had an X-rated book that somebody began to complain about as a parent, and how many believe we have the right to talk about things? And then all of a sudden she began to complain about it and how X-rated it was, and she began to read from it. And they got mad at her, kicked her out. But yet the children can read it, but it was too X-rated for them to hear about it. If the foundations have been destroyed, what can the righteous do? A church had a rainbow flag in front of the church. And in the Sunday school, they were talking about, and they allowed a drag queen person to come in there and teach Sunday school. No. In our country, yes. What can the righteous do? Flee. What's the sense? It's going to get worse and worse, because evil men shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. What's the use? The devil will say to us. I found out a lady today fell off the bus going out soul winning, and I thank God for her. How many are glad people continue to serve the Lord no matter what? But if the foundations are destroyed, can we keep going, or are we going to just flee? People said, when are you going to retire? I said, when I can't move on a court. And that may be tonight, who knows? But I just want to keep going. But what about this, what's happening with injustice? In one school, a girl had a party all night. And they acted out suicide. She had the party. All the kids started laughing as they acted out how a girl killed herself all night. Do you mean people can be that cold? If the foundations of people's hearts is destroyed, what can the righteous do? I'm thinking right now of a man on an airplane that was next to the window. And you say the love of many is growing cold. And the man was having a heart attack in the window seat, and the paramedics wanted to get to the guy, and the guy in the middle seat would not move. Wow. How many think we as church people ought to move from the middle seat? And we ought to say, what can I do? Not if the foundations are destroyed, what can I complain about? But, oh God, what can I do about it? And so what we see here is we see evil getting worse. I mean, one girl went in the bathroom, saw her name on the restroom wall. Go home and swallow motor oil, light a match to your throat, because we don't want you here anymore. And she got so depressed, she went in her bedroom for 3 months. 3 months later, she came out of her bedroom, went back to school, and one girl said hi to her. And she said that one word, hi, changed my whole life. How many of you believe one person can make a difference? So if the foundations are destroyed, what can one person with the Savior do about it? I'm thinking right now of a principal that started weeping after my assembly with the whole school. I just mentioned the word suicide, just mentioned it. And Pastor, the whole middle school started weeping. And the principal said, "You're probably wondering why we were all crying during this time. You mentioned suicide." I said, "Yes." He said, we had a 7th grade boy that just shot himself 2 days before the assembly. We haven't even gotten the blood off the walls yet. We're in a country that's very hurting right now. Injustice everywhere. So why don't you just run away? What's the use of sitting here listening to an old-fashioned preacher every Sunday? Why don't we just throw the towel in? Do you know people will go into Trump rallies and they'll go in there and stand in the rain outside all night to get a close seat near the front? And I said this in one church. I mean, people by the thousands pack out a stadium to hear a political message. But what happens on Wednesday night to a lot of us? By the way, how many would agree that when God's man preaches, that's God speaking through him? Raise your hands real high. If God, the Creator, is speaking through him, we ought to have more excitement about being there than at a political rally. And you know, I preached that in one church. There was 1,000 on Sunday morning, and only 200 came back Sunday night. Problem. We are either the solution or the problem. I mean, it's hard to believe what's going on. On one New York City scene, a man was being kicked to death. 400 people walked by and didn't even help. But if the foundations of a tender heart is destroyed, what can the righteous do? Now, he tells us what he did and what we can do. How many are glad there's an answer? So what's the answer? Look at Psalm 11 and verse 1 again. In the Lord put I my trust. How many are glad we can still trust the Lord no matter how bad it's getting around us? How shall you say to my soul, flee to your mountain? Get to safety. His safety was in his God. He can trust in God. He doesn't have to scheme answers. How many believe God knows the answer? So in verse 2, for lo, the wicked bend their bow, they make ready their arrow upon the string, that they may privily shoot at the upright in heart. So even nowadays, there's hardly any accidental shootings. It's all on purpose in our big cities. But then in verse 3, he says again, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? So he says what he's doing about it. And it's so encouraging. It is so encouraging. In verse 4, the Lord is in his holy temple. No matter how bad it is around us, God is still on his throne. How many of you can say a hearty amen that God still is on his throne? Right? And he's still the answer. He's still in charge. Now on Hannity, how many of you have ever seen Hannity on Fox News? He calls another reporter, Mark Levin, the great one. How many believe God is the great one? Right? Psalm says, great is the Lord, greatly to be praised in the city of our God and the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth. In Mount Zion, the sides of the north, the city of the great king. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. For as much as there is none like unto thee, O Lord, thou art great, and in thy name is great in might. In Jeremiah 10:6. How about this? For great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and he is to be feared above all gods. Psalm 96:4. For great is the Lord. Scream out the word great. Great is the Lord, greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all God. I don't care how great an announcer is, there's only one great one. For he is mighty, he hath done great things, holy is his name. Lift up your eyes on high. So he said, the Lord is in his holy temple. That's my first answer. I'm not going to run away from my problems because my God is still in charge and in control. I remember they told me, you don't want to go to the school. Seriously, this is incredible, what happened to me. In the evening, before I had to drive 4 hours to a school, I had picked up a piece of furniture and I forgot you're supposed to use your legs and not your back. How many of you know what this is like? Raise your hands real high. So I picked up this furniture and I used my back and it pulled out so bad it felt like a knife was jabbing me. And I'm laying there on the floor, Lord, do you really want me to go to the school tomorrow? I can't even stand up. And the Lord said, you go, and lo, I'm with you always. So the next morning, I got out of bed in agony. And I felt the knife jabbing. It took me 45 minutes to get my sneaker on. So I went to the car. Lord, I'm going to do this by faith. I went to the car and drove 4 hours. When I got to the school, I couldn't get out of the car because when I tried to lift my leg up, it made that knife jab so bad that I couldn't get my leg out. And how many would agree I need my leg to play volleyball? So I couldn't get it out, so God said, well, your arms are okay, so I actually lifted my leg out of the car. Now I have a major problem. The other leg is still in the car, and how many of you believe I need both legs to play volleyball? So I reached down, got that leg out. Now I'm walking up to the school. No exaggeration. The principal's standing here. I said, I'm the one-man volleyball team. And she said, we'll cancel this. I said, no, bring the kids in the gym. I said it by faith. She brought the kids in the gym, and for 1 solid hour and 20 minutes, God removed the pain. Why? He's on his holy temple. I don't need to flee, even though you're walking. And so anyhow, I had 3 schools that day. After that was over, the pain came back worse than before. Now I had to go to another school, and I was hurting again, and I was walking, and we'll cancel this. And God took the pain away in all 3 assemblies. Now that was before COVID. Now think of this a minute. Just near COVID, before it began, I had a 7-week program of going to 77 schools, and my son-in-law said, you've got to stretch. You're going to have 277 games in the next 7 weeks. That's impossible. I know, only God makes things happen. So anyway, my son-in-law was insisting that I stretch. Now, I've never stretched in my whole career. I eat everything in sight. I don't do whatever any athlete does, and I know it's God doing this whole thing. And so he said, why don't I show you how to stretch? And he had me get in an Indian position. So I got on the floor in an Indian position and did what he said. He said, now push your knees to the floor as far as you can go. All of a sudden, some horrendous pain came to my knees. And I learned an amazing lesson. Never listen to a son-in-law in your entire life. Because I could hardly stand up again after he did that with me. So I'm walking in with the youth pastor to my first assembly. And it reminded me of 15 years before when I was limping because of my back. Now I'm limping because of my knee. And he looked at me and said, I'm nervous. I said, did God bring the animals to Noah's Ark exactly at the right time? He said, yes. When I start playing, you'll see how God will take over and I'll be able to play. And I said it all by faith because it was all God that had to do this. And I walked in like this, and they were ready to cancel too, and God took the pain away. When it was over, we went to the Chinese buffet, which every spiritual person goes to. I went to the Chinese buffet, and I couldn't even walk up and get my food. He had to bring it to me. He said, do you realize that we have another school to go to? I said, yes. So I was hurting walking into that school. I said, God did it before, he can do it again, because he's in his holy temple. How many are glad God is there with us? So God took the pain away again. When that school ended, I had an afternoon assembly. I went to Walmart. I was hurting so bad, I went to get Bengay. And the Bengay was all the way in the corner of the store, miles away from me. And I had to, this is the truth, I had to ride the electric cart to get my Bengay. The volleyball guy. Riding the electric cart. Went to the 3rd school, and now I'm practically crawling, and God took the pain away during the game. In all 77 schools, I was going in like this, and God removed the pain in all 77 of them during the time it was there to get their attention and give them a message. How many would agree we serve a resurrected Savior? And what a blessing it is how God can do what I can't do. See, God never fails. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God is still in his holy temple. And so what we ought to say, if God is in his holy temple, I'm not going to run away. I'm going to keep on fighting, keep on going, keep on falling out of buses, and just keep on going forward. How many believe that's what we should do? There's no holes in God. God is there. He says, I am. That means he was there before. He's going to be there in the future when he comes back to rule and reign. But he's the I am God right now for this moment. How many are glad we serve a God who's there for us now? In the very present help of trouble. He's there with us. And we ought to say, get self out of the way. If God is in the center, I don't have to trust in myself. I can keep going. Now, there's no joy without you. I can't live without you. There's no life without you. I can't move without you. I know what that means. There's no ability without God's weapons. In my own sword, there's no success. But thank God, I serve a great king who is on his throne, and he's coming back to rule and reign. And how many can't wait till he comes back to rule and reign on this earth? But until that day happens, when trouble comes, you ought to do what Psalm 46 says. You can look at this later. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. To get you away from trouble? No, in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried in the midst of the sea, though the waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with swelling. Selah, in other words, stop and think that you've got a God who's on his throne and can work when you can't do it. And so he says, God is in the midst of her, which means God is in the middle of all of it. Oh, no, run to the mountain. We've lost our God. There's no hope for America anymore. Why don't we just throw the towel in? No, let's go in the next year, right? Let's keep going. Be in the middle of everything, because God is. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted, and the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. How many are glad we can run to him? Right? He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow. He cutteth the spear in asunder. He burns the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I'm God. I will be exalted among the heathen. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Well, the government's failing us. It can fail us yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but how many believe Jesus is there yesterday, today, and tomorrow? So we can trust him at all times. He's in control. And why we know this? My sheep hear my voice. I know them. They follow me. I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish. The true Christian is a follower of Christ. And what that means is the shepherd is in front of me, because I can't follow him if he's behind me. So if Jesus is in front of me, I serve a God who knew me before the foundation of the earth. So what that means is God has never been a time when God hasn't known us. How many of you are glad that God has known you for all eternity? Now that encourages you to know that that shepherd is there before you get there. And I thought of this, that God is actually everywhere I go before I get there. Now, there's 2 times I'm very nervous. One, don't ask me why, but I'm very nervous at a drive-thru. I'm like this at a drive-thru. My daughters are there to order coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm trembling at that speaker. But you put me in a gym with 16,000 people, I'm laughing, having a ball. But when I go to a drive-thru, I get nervous. My daughters, one time I actually said to the person, my daughter wants a caffeinated cafe. I couldn't even think what I was saying. The next one I went to, this order is to go. We know, you're in our drive-thru. This order's to go. But the other time I get very nervous is when I go in a hospital room and I have to share something that would encourage somebody. And I don't want to give a pat answer, but I'll often say, God is with you. Now, what that actually means, he was in the hospital room before you ever got here. Wow. And if we follow him, watch this now, we're following one who's on his throne. We're following one who will never fall from his throne. Can you say amen to that? And we're following him, and while we're following him, he's in front of us. If God opens the door to come in the schools around here, God will already be doing the assemblies before I ever come down here. And I thought of that, and I said, is that ever encouraging? Don't ever say I'm ready to throw in the, let's finish this, I'm ready to throw in the what? Towel. I'm at the end of my, okay, I'm just a bundle of nerves. My life is falling apart. I'm at my wits' end. How many are glad we don't have to resign from the human race? Go run away. What's the use, David? Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God, Psalm 27. So if the foundations are destroyed, not what can Trump do, but what not the government, and we thank the Lord. Don't mean to be picking on Trump. I believe it'd be wonderful if he could go back and do some of the things to help our country out again. But I'm going to tell you, we have a God who created Trump that can solve things. So I remember how my furnace got destroyed in New Hampshire. And you Alabama folks don't know what New Hampshire winters are like. Your eyelids turn to icicles. It's bad. And we need our furnace, and they had a crack down the side of it. And they said, it's condemned, and you can't use this anymore. You're going to get a new furnace for $10,000. And then I was praying for a way to preach on hell and judgment and the love of God, because somebody got up and said, I don't preach on hell or judgment. So I was praying for a way to get a $10,000 furnace replaced, praying for a way to get the true gospel on the networks. Then I was praying also for 3 cameras to film a program. And would you believe it? A man called me up and said, are you anywhere near Carrollton, Texas? I said what I always say, let me look at my calendar, because I don't even know where I'm at now. And it's so good to be in Mississippi. Thanks for bringing me here. So I looked down and saw that I was 5 minutes from where he wanted me to come. 5 minutes. I walked in the gym, 3 cameras were ready to film the program. He said, do you mind if we film what you're doing? I said, not at all. When it was over, he handed me the footage and said, you can have it for your ministry. That night, the TV producer, who had his movie star cancel in the morning, and that's why they filmed it, he came to my rally, and my subject was the cross and how Christ took our judgment upon himself so we wouldn't be condemned. He looked at me and said, do you mind if we air this on television? This wasn't the feel-good gospel. This was the truth. I said, I won't mind at all. And then he handed me a check for $10,000 that paid the whole furnace off. And I asked him, are you an angel? And he didn't answer me. Then he disappeared into the, no. But you say, what in the world are the chances of that happening? No chance with man-made stuff, but thank God the Lord is there before I get there. And I'll never forget when my wife had to drive while I was laying in the back seat. My back was so, if anybody was not going to do any sports, you're looking at them, much less more games than anybody. And so literally, I had a roommate at Bible college that used to say, if God uses you, everybody's going to know it's God. And so how true that is. But literally, and I'm not exaggerating, literally my wife is driving and I'm laying in the back seat, and every time she hit a bump in the road, it was killing me. So I had a couple things against me. First, it was a Ford. Having a church split right now. Secondly, a woman driver. I drive worse than my wife. Anyway, what was I saying? I forgot. Hello? Are you listening? Am I thinking right? What did I say? Oh, yeah, okay. I was just thinking of the game tonight and how I'm trembling with the thought of playing you. I really am, because I'm not good in grass. But anyhow, so what was I? So I'm laying in the back seat by faith, and she's driving. And every bump she hit was killing me. So I said, honey, let's just get a night's rest, get off this exit. And I'm walking into the hotel. And the lady at the desk said, you have a back problem. I said, no, ma'am, I enjoy walking like this. It's fun. She said, I've got a chiropractor who could help you. And I thought, what doctor's going to see me at 7 at night? And I don't have any money to pay for a doctor. She insisted, and he took me in, put me on a table before the great adjustment. How many of you have ever been adjusted by a chiropractor? You know what I'm talking about. I'm lying on the table waiting for his adjustment at 7 at night. And I looked up and I saw in the ceiling, Jesus saves. Amen. Now I began to think, what's he going to do to me? Could have said, prepare to meet God. I'm about to adjust you. Well, he came in there and did all the stuff they do, you know. And he was friendly and talking to me while I was getting adjusted. He said, what do you do in your work? I said, I travel the country. I do volleyball games and preach. And he said, you're a Christian. I said, yes. He said, so am I. I'm giving it to you as an offering to your ministry. Got in the car. I told my wife. And God took care of us, and then we had a night's rest. The next morning, she kept driving. I kept laying in the back seat. We went another 7 hours. I said, honey, let's find another chiropractor. Drove off an exit. Never been there in my life. Saw a sign that said chiropractor. So I walked in. The doctor said, you're in pain. I'll take you right in. Thank you. He put me on the table, and they always want to get your mind off the next crack they're going to do. So he was about to crack me, and he started asking, what do you do? And I said, I travel the country doing assemblies in schools and seeing young people get saved and come to Christ. He said, you're born again. I said, yes. He said, so am I. And he didn't charge me anything. Amen. I got in the car, went another 5 hours. I said, honey, let's find one more chiropractor. And I'm not exaggerating. God led me to a third born-again chiropractor who didn't charge me anything. So from there, I went to the Cadillac dealer and told him I was a Christian. But I didn't get a Cadillac. Now, you say, what are the chances of this happening? I have a God who's on his throne. Amen. I was praying for a motorhome back when my girls were 4 and 6. Now they're 38, 40, and 20. And I was begging the Lord for a motorhome. I felt like God may want me to have one because of all these schools that were open. Guess what happened? A total stranger called me from Oregon. He said, I hear you're going in schools trying to offer hope. I don't know you. I have no idea who you are, just like your pastor didn't know who I was, and that's why he's never having me back again. But literally, and I'm not exaggerating, that man said, send me a video of what you're doing in schools. So I sent him the video. And he saw it, and he said, I love this ministry that you're going right in the front lines. He said, I want to give you a gift. I thought, I need a new pen with my name on it. He said, if you'll get a one-way plane ticket to Portland, Oregon, he said, I'd like to give you my new motorhome I just bought. I said, would you repeat that one more time? And he repeated it again. I said, for some reason, I feel led to come to Portland, Oregon. I got off the airplane, and a young man handed me the keys to a brand new $50,000 rig. I'm driving it all across America saying the only answer, God is on his throne. And if we go with the gospel, he takes care of us. It's amazing. He's there before I get there. He's there before I pray because he makes intercession for us. The Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom rules over all. Psalm 103:19. In my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, I cried for help, and from his temple he heard my voice, and my cry reached into his ear. You mean God has time to focus on what I'm saying? You mean his ear is actually listening to us? Yes. Oh, that ought to encourage us so much. The Lord hath prepared his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom ruleth over all. In my distress, we can cry unto him. Can any hide himself in secret places, that I shall not see him? For do not I fill heaven and earth? Jeremiah 23:24. The Lord is in his holy temple, which we just read. Thus saith the Lord, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. And where is the house that you build unto me, and where is the place of my rest? We can rest, and boy, you don't want to miss the 5 o'clock service. I'm going to ask the crowd, how many of you will come back at 5? And if one doesn't, I'm going to preach it right now to 1 o'clock. So how many are going to do your best to be here at 5 o'clock? You've got to hear what I'm going to say at that point. He ruleth by his power forever. His eyes behold the nations. I'm telling you, I don't care what's going on or how bad it is. God, I'm not going to act like an atheist towards you. Because every time I worry, I'm an atheist while I'm worrying. God is good. It is better to trust in the Lord than put confidence in man. Thus saith the Lord, cursed is the man that trusts in man and maketh flesh his arm. Just met a man worth billions. He said, I want to take your message all over the world on some kind of live streaming that he does, and he's working with Elon and all, and they want to get the gospel to the whole world. But you know what? I don't trust in man, no matter. But how many believe God can use people? So pray that God will keep using. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. Yeah, but God, I can't play volleyball. This youth pastor's making fun of me. I can't play. God says, am I here? Have you forgotten me? Be still and know that I'm God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us, and the God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. So stop and remember, why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home when Jesus is my portion? My constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow. I know he watches over me. I sing because I'm happy. God, there's a lot of multitudes of people I've seen that have so many heartbroken lives. One boy had his head on the desk, and he was crying so hard. The homeroom teacher said, what happened? He said, last night I got so drunk I didn't know what I was doing. And I have a 2-year-old baby brother, and I put that hot poker in the fireplace, and it was red hot, and my mom just texted me that he's in the emergency room with 60 holes in his body thanks to me. And it was like he was crying out for hope. But our God can handle anything. God is strength and strong, but I'm in a tight place. I'm sure that boy thought so, but how many are glad God's arm can reach down and save him? No matter what. Somebody said once, fear blurs the vision, stampedes the nerves, paralyzes the cause, and doesn't change anything for the better. Fear forgets everything and runs away to the mountain. But faith rises up and says, God, because you're in control, I am not going to quit church because we had some kind of COVID. And I know that's been well talked about. We don't need to go back into it. But I'm going to tell you this. The Bible says, don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together unless there's a fungus among us. No, do not forsake. Say it, I'm not going to forsake the church. You don't know how many are closing down. Why? We're going to take you off the throne, God. We don't believe you're still able, so we're just going to put a sign out, closed. And God says, I don't want you to flee, I want you to fight. Let's bow in prayer.